What's up, guys? It is Chris back for Watch Chris. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing to the channel, hitting that bell icon, and of course, hitting that like button if you found this video interesting or helpful. Today, a little bit of a special video. We're talking about a Grail watch that I was able to purchase in 2023. However, here we are in 2024, and I'm only now getting the watch back from service. Yes, this watch was in my hands for only about a month before it stopped working, and I had to send it back to the manufacturer to have it repaired. They had it for about 2 months, so that means they had the watch longer than I've actually had the watch, and now it is working. It's not 100%, and we're going to talk about that in the video, but I do have it back, and they are standing behind the watch. I'll tell you about where I purchased it, how I purchased it. We'll talk about the watch a little bit. The history behind this watch is really important. And the watch that we're talking about is an Urwerk. It's the Urwerk 103.03. I went down the rabbit hole with Urwerk and of course MB&F a long time ago, and I've always wanted to own either an Urwerk or an MB&F, and really I would love to own both, but I'm not sure that's in the cards currently. However, I did buy this watch. It is the Urwerk 103, and we're going to take a look at it right now. So as I mentioned in the intro, there was some issues with this watch. We'll get to those issues in just a few minutes. I did buy this watch on Chrono 24. Now this was actually the first time I've ever purchased a watch on Chrono 24, and I decided to pull the trigger on this watch because it was such a good price and it had a warranty from Urwerk, which I thought was very important, especially considering the repair costs on a watch like this. It was actually coming from Europe. It came from Monaco. It got to me very quickly. It was in exactly the condition that it was described, and when it came, it was working really well. It was telling perfect time. It looked fantastic, and of course, it felt fantastic. It came with 2 straps, and I got it for an excellent price. It also came with a year warranty from Urwerk, and then another year on top from the company that I actually bought it from. So this was a company selling on Chrono 24. Unfortunately, after only about a month of wearing the watch just completely stopped. In fact, it was the day that I went to make this video where the watch stopped. I picked it up, I went to wind the watch, and I noticed that the second hand was not moving. So I immediately emailed the people that I bought it from. They told me to contact Urwerk because it was still under warranty. Urwerk told me to send it back to them. There was a mess up with DHL. It sat in a warehouse for about 2 weeks before I had to actually go and get the watch, physically bring it to Cellini here in New York City, and then Cellini then sent it to Urwerk. So a grand total of about 2 months with Urwerk, and probably another 3 weeks of the watch just sitting in the mail, which is kind of crazy. But all said and done, the watch is back now and it is working. And I do want to mention this watch was serviced in May of 2023 for a very similar issue to what it had in October of 2023. Okay, so that's how I purchased the watch. That's how I got the watch serviced for the second time in 1 year. Let's talk about the watch itself, why I purchased it, why I love it so much, and why I think it's so important. So back in 1997, Martin Fry and Felix Baumgartner started Urwerk. They started out with 2 watches, the 101 and the 102. These were very traditional looking watches compared to what they would come out later on. These were circular watches, so circular cases, round cases, with wandering hour complications. They were good looking watches. They did pretty well, but not well enough. They were actually going to go out of business before they came out with the 103. They actually didn't have enough money to create the 103 prototype in precious metals. They actually used stainless steel to create the prototypes. And there's a story about those prototypes being sold, and a few of them are actually on the market currently. They were actually able to sell 103s based off of those prototypes, and they were very well received. In fact, I was told by someone who's a pretty good insider of the watch industry that the most traded independent watch in the world currently, and it kind of makes sense because the 103 came out in 2003. That was way before all these other brands, all these other independent brands came out. The original 103 that came out had a small window. It had a very similar mechanism to the watch that we're looking at. So it has that 4-arm wandering hour with the rotating discs. However, it only had a small sapphire window at the bottom of the watch where you could actually read the time. It looks sort of like a driver's watch, and it acts that way too, and that's kind of why I was attracted to it. And one of the coolest stories behind the 103 has to do with Max Buser. Max Buser, who was actually working at Harry Winston at the time, collaborated with Martin Fry and Felix Baumgartner after he saw the 103. He thought the 103 was an amazing watch and he wanted to collaborate with them. Before MB&F even existed, he collaborated with them on the Opus 5, and Max Buser himself actually says the 103 is what inspired him to start MB&F. So if the 103 never existed, we wouldn't have MB&F today. That's pretty incredible, especially since MB&F have become a powerhouse in independent watchmaking. So why did I buy this watch? Well, it's not only because of these reasons, of the history behind the watch and who was involved making the watch and who it inspired. It has to do with the looks also. You don't realize it when you see these watches online. However, if you ever see a 103 in person, it's not a big watch. In fact, it's under 36 millimeters wide. The lug span is around 49 millimeters, and there's around a 13 millimeter thickness. The crown doesn't matter because it's actually embedded within the lugs. It wears really comfortably on my wrist. It's a heavy watch because it's made out of solid white gold. However, the case back is made out of titanium, and you do have a window on that case back that gives you minutes, a running seconds, and a power reserve. This is called the dashboard. This is something that they did for the first time on the 103, and it's actually carried over to many of their other watches. Instead of getting a display case back, you're getting a really cool little information board. Now, the movement inside my watch is, I believe, a Zenith caliber. They've used Zenith and they've used GP. I believe they've used a few other base calibers. On this watch is a 4-arm wandering hour complication. You have 4 arms that radiate from the center of the watch where the hour and minute hand would normally attach to the movement. And then there is, of course, those 4 arms that spin, and as they spin, those discs spin, and that's how you tell the hour. The hour then points to the minutes, and that's how you tell the time. It's very, very simple, and when you get used to it, it's really easy. And this watch is actually very well loomed. I'll do a loom shot so you can see what I'm talking about. It looks amazing in the dark. The case on these watches are also very special. Mine has these striations that go down the front of the case. They're actually cut with a lathe, and they are cut through the entire case. Now, some of the watches, some of the 103s don't have them through the whole case. There are different versions and different styles. However, mine does. And then when you look at it on the side, it's sort of slab-sided, but you have a little bit of a stepped case on the side. It looks great, and you have a giant crown. The case back is in a matte finish, and like I said, that's titanium. That's the only part about this watch that if it gets scratched, you cannot buff out. So don't scratch the back of your Urwerk. Mine is scratched. I didn't make those scratches. It came that way. I was already aware of it, but it's only scratched in the back of the watch, which for me is okay. So that's really it. That's the reason why I bought this watch and why I love this watch and why I think it's one of the most important watches, one of the most important modern watches made. If Urwerk went out of business, there would be a lot of watch brands out there that would have not been inspired to go and make something crazy like De Bethune and again MB&F. And there are plenty of other brands that we could talk about that I think took inspiration from Martin Fry and of course Felix Baumgartner. I'll leave you with this interesting story. During Watch Time 2023, I sat down for dinner next to a table of, it was just a couple, really just sitting there having dinner. I was with about 10 guys eating dinner after the show. The guy that was sitting next to us was one of the people who started FP Journe, and he also owned a watch reselling business. And he was one of the people who helped Martin Fry and Felix Baumgartner when they were almost down and out. He placed a huge order with them for the 103. And he actually asked them to buy one of the stainless steel prototypes when he was placing that order. And the story goes that Martin Fry and Felix Baumgartner felt like they had to sell him the watch because he was placing an order, and it was basically saving their business. So they ended up selling him one of those stainless steel prototypes. Now that prototype is selling for a lot more. I think he told me he paid around $3,000 or $4,000 for that watch, which is kind of mind-blowing. There you go. That is a crazy story. And it was crazy that I was sitting next to this guy at dinner after watch time, and he was just sitting there and he overheard us talking about Urwerk and FP Journe and all the other brands, and he came over and he just told us all the stories. I actually looked him up, and it's legitimate. Really did start FP Journe, and he was the person who bought that stainless steel 103. Anyway, guys, lots of stories in this video. Tell me what you think down in the comments below. What do you think of the Urwerk 103? What do you think of Urwerk in general? What do you think of MB&F? What do you think of the stories that I told in this video? I want to hear from you guys. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, all of that good stuff. It is really helpful for the channel, and I very much appreciate it. Anyway, guys, thank you for logging on. I'll catch you guys in the next video.